And we should get photos and stuff with that we can show as well. Good time, Rodney. We're just getting ready to start the lesson, so you can interrupt early. Are you done?
Never late.
Are you done yet?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Trying. All right. Get on next session, take this on that section, and I'll put it over here.
You have the sticky, yeah, does anybody need the green sticky dots as a reminder? Yeah, several, okay. You have some of the places, we'll place those around as well.
Do you know what we're doing?
A lot of people put them
Yes.
on their
If you don't know what we're doing,
phone
I'll
or
be
watch or whatever, just to remind them when they see the dot to pray. So there you go, some over here. There, place it there.
The school prayer walk starts next Sunday from 2 to 4 at the school of your choice. So anytime that you want to pray for them, or you want to just drive around and pray, or if you want to walk around and pray, that's an opportunity that you need to share. The main emphasis is the safety and welfare of our children, the safety and welfare of the people at the school, and those that are trying to help us. Again, each name is attached to a family. That family should be something that you're praying for too. It's not just one of those casual things that we'll just stick back there and forget about. Use those green dots. Thank you. Did I miss anything?
Thank you.
Now the idea is if you're married, you both ought to get one.
Yeah, let me get one for that.
Because primarily, you don't need to just pray for the one, for both of you. I have over 100 names to pray for, so I'm trying to get around to all of the classes.
Plenty to go around.
So I'll continue to go around. So,
Thank you, Rodney.
thank you.
All right, so this morning we are in the second in this session of lessons that Dickie started for us last week. Thank you, Dickie, by the way, for filling in last week during our anniversary service as we were doing some other things, got tied up in. So I wrote some names up on the board, and what I want to look at this morning, what do they have in common? So you look at, you got Daniel from the Bible, Daniel lies down, right? You, me, on this, Paul, think of what Paul went through in his missionary trips. David, again, not me, from the Bible, as a child and as King David as well. Rack, Shack, and Benny, okay, who wants VeggieTales? Okay, Rack, Shack, and Benny is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, okay? So if you ever see VeggieTales, that's what it has always stuck in my head. What do they all have in common? What do we all have in common?
Trust in God.
They trust in God. Faith.
Servants. Trials.
Trials, yeah.
At one time or another, we all had to have complete and total dependence on God.
Yes.
All sinned at one point.
We'll see.
Sin.
I was going to get you to clarify all seen.
Yeah, sin, sorry.
Anything else you think of? I know there's lots of things we can fill the board up with. The lesson this morning, we're going to kind of get into this. No matter what, and I'll say one other on this, is it kind of goes along with dependence. We'll say needs outside our control. We all face things at certain times in our lives where we feel like it's outside of our control, don't we? We can't do anything to fix it, and we have to turn to God. So we have total dependency on God during those times. But yet we got to have faith to do that. We got to trust God's going to do that. All the things that we've talked about are things that each one of these during times of trial have to turn to God to do it for them, right? Now, God doing it for them and God doing things for us doesn't mean that we go sit in a chair somewhere and say, God's going to take care of this. I'm done. I prayed about it and it's over. Does God want us to partake in what He's going to do for us? We're participants a lot of times, aren't we? God says, I want you to go ahead. That's what we're going to look at this morning. God takes us and puts us in positions to use us. But God does it. But He does it through us many times, or He does it through others. There's things that God just takes care of. We know that. God can do things any way He wants to. He's God. But we get the blessings by being able to be a part of what He does for us and what He allows us to do. But we have to depend on God to do it. So, we've talked about, sometimes we just feel totally overwhelmed, don't we? What happens when we are totally overwhelmed? What, in your own personal life, what do you typically do when you get totally overwhelmed? Stop. That's the best thing to do sometimes. Now, sometimes
What I should do.
I mean, whatever you try to do, there's no momentum to anything because at work we call it thrashing.
Yeah, we're good at that. We're good at thrashing. I agree with that.
Sometimes we act like we shouldn't when we get
Yes.
completely overwhelmed. I should stop. Yeah.
Yeah, before when you find yourself at the bottom of the hole,
Right.
best thing to do is quit digging, right?
Yeah.
Throw your hands up.
Yeah. I'm done. Most of the time, if you're like me, when I get to the point, and it takes me a while sometimes because I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And sometimes it takes me a while to realize that, God, I can't do this. And I've usually gone so far, and you'd think you'd learn, because it's not the first time we've done this. We've all been around the block a time or two. And do we still find ourselves getting frustrated to the point that we throw our hands up? If you're like me, you do. And it's one of those things I should know better. But I finally get to the point and I say, God, I can't do this. I need you to do it for me. And God's saying, I've been sitting there the whole time. I've been telling you to let me do this the whole time. And we're just so hard-headed sometimes that we don't want to give that control over to God and let Him have that for us and take care of it for us. And we many times have to get to that point where we're broken before we do that. Now, hopefully as we get older, and our faith grows, we kind of get to that point sooner instead of waiting until the point that we're completely broken. That we say, God, I need your help up front. Here's what I'm getting ready to face. And it may be that we pray, a great prayer in the mornings is that God would open avenues for us to have to share His Word, but at the same time, God would prepare us for the things that's going to face us during the day. There used to be the bracelets going around. I'm sure you still find them around WWJD, right? What would Jesus do? You can't get to a point you're thinking that without having a relationship with Jesus on a daily basis. It's not a emergency cord that you can pull and say, oh, here's what Jesus would say right now. If you've not prepared yourself for that, we just don't know. We need to be ready up front. And we see that this morning in what we're going to be in 2 Chronicles. And I forgot to write Asa up here. That's who we're going to be talking about in his leadership with the armies that he has. So if we know that we need Him, and we know we need His guidance, and we need Him to handle things for us, why do we wait? Because we do this a lot.
We don't want to bother Him with our small, little insignificant problems. We got this.
Yeah, that's part of it, absolutely.
And we think we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We have our plan. Our plan. We know how this is supposed to go.
Yeah.
So
If God just go along with our plans,
I was
everything
gonna
will
say,
happen.
if we have our plan, we're good.
Yeah.
I think as much as anything, David, it's because we don't always pray first. A lot of times we end up praying after we've gotten that far down the road. And going along with what everyone has said, we have our plan, or we feel like we can do those things, and we don't pray before we start. Sometime after.
we act first many times, don't we? I get tickled. I'll use the comment sometimes. We're a society of ready, fire, aim. Because we get ready, we pull trigger and go. We don't bother aiming. We just go, do something. And we're a society that praises that, right? We praise sometimes the wrong behaviors. We praise actions. So you can see actions, you can experience those things, so it's easy to measure, it's easy to do those things. And we as Christians fall into the same thing the workplace does. As we go, even if it's the wrong direction, we go until we find out it's the wrong direction, then we switch and go somewhere else, which causes the thrashing Scott mentioned. And we do the same thing in our Christian life. Many times it's like, we gotta act, we gotta go do something, let's go do something, whatever it is. And many times we don't pray about it before we do it. And then we're down this path and God's saying, you know, it's not that we're doing bad things. We're doing good things. It's just not what He wanted us to do. And that's when we get into this, to me, I can usually feel after I'm down this path a while, God, why don't I feel peace about this? Why am I struggling with this? Why do I feel like it's just, I'm pushing uphill the whole way? And I know we've all been there, where you're doing things, it's like, why is it so hard? This seems so simple. Why is it so hard to do? And sometimes He'll wake me up and say, that's not what I wanted you to do. Let me guide you, and it will be that easy. It will be, you'll have that peace. I won't say it's going to be easy, but we won't have that feeling in here of struggle and strife as we're trying to go through some of these things. But we've got to be willing and turned over to Him, and that's where we really struggle, is turning things over. It's a pride thing many times too. You know, I hadn't mentioned that, but there's a certain amount of pride that we have, that we want to be the one in control and driving the car, and saying, God, you just come along, let me tell you how good I am, and do this. So there's a certain amount of pride. This morning we're going to look in 2 Chronicles, as I've said. We're in chapter 14, and it's an interesting story. As we do this, it's a real good example of allowing God to control and putting things in His hands. And just a little background before we get this. Asa has been king for about 10 years at this point. Well, I'll say it could be, it's within this 10-year span, I'll put it that way. It doesn't say this is at year 10 when this occurred, but Judah had experienced 10 years of peace, which in that day was pretty good for Judah. They had a lot of turmoil around them. They were surrounded by their enemies, and they had a lot of influx of the peoples around them wanting to take what they had. And God had, in many times, protected them, right? At points where they had turned their back on God, God had allowed them to have many, many lost battles as well through this. But this is a time, Asa was a good king, especially early in his reign. As time went on, he actually reverted back and actually ended up not so good king at the end. And I think we kind of see this as we go through some of these lessons toward the end of them. But in this part of it, Asa has taken, since he's been in the throne, he's removed a lot of the idol, tore down temples. He's gotten rid of a lot of stuff that the pagan gods were being worshipped in the towns and stuff like that within Judah, and he is commanding people to worship the one true God as he does it. So he's trying to get Judah righted again after a period of time where they had allowed a lot of pagan worship to be interjected in those, and subsequently that's the reason God had turned his back several times through some of the kings that come along before him. So we're at the point now that, like I say, they've experienced this time of peace, so they've amassed some riches within Judah, and Judah, you figure Judah's a nation, so it's got many towns within this nation. And so we come upon a time where they're getting ready to be tested here. There's an army going to march against them. That's where we pick up in verse 9. I'm going to go ahead and read all of verse 9 through 15 of chapter 14. And I'm going to butcher all these names, so just understand this is their East Tennessee version of their names on all this. Then Zerah the Cushite came against them with an army of 1 million men and 300 chariots. They came as far as Maresha. So Asa marched out with them and lined up in battle formation in Zephathah valley at Maresha. Then Asa cried out to the Lord his God, Lord, there is no one besides you to help the mighty and those without strength. Help us, Lord our God, for we depend on you, and in your name we have come against this large army. Lord, you are our God. Do not let a mere mortal hinder you. So the Lord routed the Cushites before Asa and before Judah, and the Cushites fled. Then Asa and the people who were with him pursued them as far as Gerar. The Cushites fell until they had no survivors, for they were crushed before the Lord and his army. So the people of Judah carried off a great supply of loot. Then they attacked the cities around Gerar because of the terror the Lord was on them. They also plundered all the cities, since there was a great deal of plunder in them. They also attacked the tents and the herdsmen and captured many sheep and camel. And then they returned to Jerusalem. Now, as we get into this, I want you to think about the similarities of what we face today. Sometimes we go against odds that aren't in our favor, don't we? If you look at in our nation today, if you look at the numbers of people who say they're Christians, are we a Christian nation? If you go by the numbers.
No, you go by the numbers, no.
Go by the numbers. That's not what the censuses are saying, right? It's we are no longer a Christian nation. Got a lot of different things going on, a lot of different beliefs. Some don't believe anything that's going on in our nation. Things have changed a lot. Even of those who say they're Christians, and I apologize for not pulling these numbers, the ones who say they're a Christian, it's interesting when they start drilling down more and talking to them about their beliefs, and you think, wow, that's totally not what Christianity is. But they've heard that, so it tells you, maybe somebody's saying they're a Christian, but they probably aren't in church because the things they're saying is totally opposite of what the Bible says. So it's an interesting time we live in. But there comes a time, and this is where Asa, I think, really does such a good job with the army. He comes up against this army. It says they brought, and this is an Ethiopian army. It's, the Cushites are from Ethiopia. It's actually a blend of a lot of different cultures that live in the land of the south of Judah there. So they had all these different cultures, but the predominant culture was Ethiopian in that space. So Zerah comes with this army of 1 million men and 300 chariots with them, and they line up across this valley, right? So they see this, and Asa takes his army and goes down and lines up on the other side. So they're on hillsides across each other, and then you got this flat area you think between. That's the battlefield. That's going where this battle will occur. Well, typically what they do is get close enough they can hear each other, right? This is not like they're hundreds of miles apart like we'd have battles today where they're shooting shells back and forth. It's very close range for this stuff. And he goes down, and it says in verse 11, says Asa cries out to the Lord his God. He doesn't go into a tent and have a quiet moment. He cries out in front of everyone to God for help on this. Now, one thing going up to this, Asa has a good, strong relationship with God all the way up to this point. He's not waiting for the last minute and pulling the mercy rope for God, saying, whoop, need help again. We do that sometimes, don't we? Get caught up, and it's like, relationship with God is not that important if things are going well. No, so we don't go into it that mindset, right? We're not sitting there going, well, God's not important to us, but we treat it that way, if you like me. I'll find myself not thinking about what does God want me to do? Where do I need to go next? And looking for his direction, spending enough time in his word, things like that on a day-to-day basis until some strife starts happening. And then all of a sudden, I get real into the word again and get real heavy with prayer time again and stuff like that because I need that relationship again. Asa had a good, strong relationship with God up to this point. So this is not something Asa's trying to pull the mercy rope for God to step in here. But if you read back and look, Asa had probably about 550,000 in his army. So he's going against an army that is double his size. They can see that. They're sitting on opposite sides of this valley. they can see the numbers, and double the number is going to be a big difference, right? If you're looking across, it's going to be obvious you're outnumbered. It's not going to be one of the things, I think we're close. It's going to be very obvious that you're outnumbered in this. What you'd think, Zerah's army would be, we can do this. Look at this. But then Asa prays. Now, why would he pray loudly in front of this, all this going on?
Wanted his men to know who he was dependent on.
Yes. Yes. And I think maybe even he wanted his opponent to know
Yes.
who they were depending on. Now, I'm speculating that they could hear this, right? I don't know that they could or not. But it makes me wonder if he was doing that. But I certainly think he wanted his men to understand. This is God's battle. Just like today. We are the ones, we're the instruments God's going to use, just like he used them. It was God's army. He says down here a little later, the chroniclist has written this down, that God used his army to move forward and do the things that they did to finish off the thing that was started. Asa's letting them know, guys, listen, what's it mean for your king to recognize who God is? They understood what that authority meant. And for him to give that authority over to God, and they, the ones in the armies here would have. These are seasoned, I guess, folks in their military. I don't know any other way to put that, but they're, this isn't raw recruits that they're going to battle with. These are seasoned veterans, I would say, in their army that's facing this. So they're going to know when they see these numbers. The likelihood is this is not going to go well for us. If you're looking across, you've got double size army coming at you, and you're thinking we're going to have, even if we win, a very large number of losses fighting this battle, because it's basically all hand to hand. But he prays. He says, he talks to God, and he says, no one besides you can help the mighty and those without strength. Help us, our God, for we depend on you, and in your name we've come against this large army. I think it's interesting at the end of this, on the back side of verse 11, he says, do not let a mere mortal hinder you. I think he's saying, don't let me hinder what you can do. Do we ever hinder God? Do we ever put God in a box? I do it all the time. When I pray, I put God in the box many times. And I'm saying, God, can you do this? Because that's my understanding. That's as far as I can think many times is right here. And I'm just saying, God, can you take care of this need right here? Instead of saying, God, can you do this? And use me in that. And most times it's our limitations is what we're praying around, right? I either can't understand that far, or I don't think I have the abilities to do that. Asa's doing this, and he's saying, God, I want you to take away, don't let a mere mortal keep you from having the victory you want. Don't let us hinder this thing from this being known that this is your battle. Use us to do this. And that's why we need to pray every day. And God, use me to do what you want to do. I don't care what it is. Just use me to do that. Now that's an uncomfortable prayer if you mean it. Because God will. If you allow God to use you in any way he wants to, he's going to put us in an uncomfortable position. He's going to put us in positions where it could be painful at times. It could be things that we're going to struggle with. Because he's got a message he's wanting to get out, and he's wanting to use us to do it. And sometimes we've got to go through some discomfort to do that. Because if we're not feeling any discomfort, who do we lean on for our strength?
Self.
Yeah. If I think I can handle something, I'm going to handle it. It's just the way I am. And it don't matter if it's church, work, or home, or, I'm bad about getting hold of things down farm I probably shouldn't get a hold of to lift or move and something like that. And then, used to I could do that and get by with it. Now I come back home and take a leave or something like that after that because my back's sore, my arms hurt, and everything else when I do that. But, I've always been, if I want to move something, I generally have been able to move it. and instead of asking for help and doing things the right way. We need to do that with God. Just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should take it without God's help. It's not that we couldn't do it, but how much better would it be with God leading it? How much better is it when God takes control and He's the one that does it, and then we point to Him and give Him the glory for it when it's all done? That's what He wants us to do. That's where He wants us to get in our life, where we're giving things to Him up front and saying, God, I want you to control everything. And then when times of strife hit, we can pray again. God, I really want you to take this. You know, help me. As He's saying, we're looking across. You help those with mighty and those without strength. Help us to not be in the way of what you want to accomplish. Use us to do what you want to do. And, you know, many times, just what He's saying, just don't let me be a hindrance to you. If you can use me, use me. If you need to use someone else, I'll gladly step aside. And sometimes that's hard for us too, right? To let somebody else step up and take that limelight. Because sometimes we want that pat on the back. You know, and I'm just, you know, we're all adults here. We've experienced this. Sometimes you want that pat on the back for doing something that was your ideal maybe. But God may have other plans to use someone else that needs that. They need that relationship with Him. They need that time that He is going to bless them for doing something that maybe you've had that experience before and you got blessed for it. But this time it might be somebody else. So, you know, it's not always that God wants us to be the one up front. God may be saying, yeah, you help drive this and hand this off to this person. And, you know, sometimes we look at it and say, look at all the work I did. I don't want to hand that off to them. You know, look at what I've done here. And God's saying, you know, it's not all about that, is it? If that's what it's all about, that's about where we're going to get out of this pat on the back at the last till we get home, and it's over. God wants to bless us, but He wants to do it in such a way that He is getting the glory out of everything we do. So, you know, what we don't want to get into is a relationship where God is a life preserver. If you don't need a life preserver, where's it hang? It's hanging on a wall, laying under a cushion, laying wherever, until you need it. And we don't want that kind of relationship with God. He wants us to have a real relationship, not an emergency type relationship only. That's where He's coming in at the end. Now, can He do that? Yes. Will He do that? Yes. But that's not the kind of relationship He wants with us. He wants that daily walk with us. He wants us to understand and communicate with Him and to depend on Him for love. And that's hard for us sometimes because it almost seems too easy, doesn't it? God wants the relationship because of the love He had for us and love that we should have for Him because of that. Because of the sacrifice He made, because sending His Son to die on the cross for us, that we can have eternal life. We should have that desire to have that relationship with Him. And that's what it's all about. The other stuff's going to fall in line, honestly. If we allow it to happen, it just falls in line. We don't have to really give it as much thought, except for keeping Him first. If God is first, everything else is going to fall where it needs to fall in order. Now it's interesting as you see when it goes into this, and this is kind of the times, right? In the Old Testament, when you read through a lot of these battles, it wasn't just they had a battle and everybody went back and whoever declared the victory was over. They followed behind. So the Cushite army realized they were soundly defeated, so they retreat. And a lot of times we say, okay, it's over. We should leave them alone. What does Asa do? He pursues it. It says if you read through the original text, it's not just like they were kind of trailing on behind to make sure nobody's circling back on them. They were aggressively going after them and killing them as they were going away, and they wiped them out as they went there. Now they had wealth and stuff in the city. They had gone back to in Gerard. I said Gerard. That's not right.
Gerard.
Gerard. Thank you. So they had wealth there, and so they gathered that to take back as spoils of the victory. Well, along those same lines, they start going around to the towns around that and defeating those and taking the wealth from those cities as well. And it's interesting. Part of that is culture from that time, because a lot of times they would also take men and women back as servants as part of this as well, to acclimate them into their own culture. But this one was a little bit different. God was using this time to bring fear into these other areas. These other towns had supported this army, because you don't have an army of 1 million people moving. You think about how many that is. Think about the infrastructure it takes to move 1 million people and 1 million people just to hang out. A lot of food to support them. You got to have basically cities around these to support the army being there. So these towns around this area had been supporting this army in hopes that they would go in, well, one of two things. Either hedging their bet, right? If they go in and win, we want them on our side so they don't come in and do this to us. Or they would love to see Judah fall. In this situation, they'd love to see Judah fall in this. So they're supporting it, and God, He's using this army. It's His army. So they go in and do these things, and they take over these areas too. And part of this is at that time to help them understand God's power, because it's obvious this army should not have defeated Zephyr's army. Sarah's army. They were outnumbered, sorely outnumbered. It shouldn't happen. So they were, and they were giving credit to God as they go through and as they have these victories. They're giving credit to God all the way for these things, and they bring these things back, the treasures back to Judah to help build up Judah. So this is not unusual to have this happen, but the fact that God is the one directing this, God is the one who's getting the glory for this, and making sure that the area understands Judah is God's city. God's protected them. God has given them these victories. And if you come to a warfare situation, which is what they experienced for many, many years before this, they were attacked, they were attacked, they were attacked, they were attacked. They spent the last 10 years of this peaceful time building up the individual cities around Judah. So they rebuilt walls. They put the things in place to protect the cities because they were under attack a lot, and they used this time of peace to refortify and rebuild things that needed to be there. And it's no less important today that people understand what God can do. Now, I'm not saying to this degree. I don't think God's going to use us to go marching through Kingsport and take over Kingsport. Although sometimes I wonder if it'd be a good thing for us to do. We'll start Mount Carmel first and then work our way there. I won't even go there with all that. But God needs to understand when we do things. When we have successes, when we go out and do things, we got to give Him the glory for it. So people understand where we get our strength from. A lot of times it's just through bad times, isn't it? When they flew the planes into the World Trade Center, people scared. Everybody got scared very quickly. Wondered what's next. Is this just the beginning of something much bigger? Is it going to roll across the country and do all these things? And praise the Lord, that didn't happen. But it's so interesting to see our churches fill up. And it was interesting again to see months later as the churches dwindle back down to the same size they were in many instances before that happened. Fear causes us to do things. And people need to understand how strong God is sometimes. We need, and we can show that. And sometimes it's very quietly that we can show that. When something like that happens, it's a calmness sometimes that people will notice more than strength. That, I had people actually talk to me about why are you so, why is it this freaking you out when we had that happen? And it happened to her. And I'm like, God's got this. I'm not saying they can't fly a plane into my building tomorrow. I'm just saying God's got this. And I know where my future is. And I know if they fly a plane into me, I know where I'm going to spend eternity. So it's not that stressful for me. Do I not want to see it happen? Absolutely. Do I want my family to be protected? Absolutely. But I also look to God, and I know God's got protection around my family because they're all saved. And I know where they're going to be one day. And I want their life to point everything to God as well. And that's where we've got to get to, is that everything we do, you know, we need to depend on God to give us the guidance, to give us the strength, and to give us the patience. Patience is a hard one, because we're not very patient people. And we want what we want when we want it. And if we don't get it, then our plans start taking over a lot of times, because, well, obviously God's not going to do this, so I'm going to do it for him. He should know this is the right thing to do. So, you know, we need to have patience, and we need to let God. But I think it's so critical that, just like Asa did here, with not only his army, but I truly believe that the armies he was going against understood that this was God's army that they were in battle against. It says God defeated the Cushites. It didn't say Asa and his army. It said God's army did this. God and his army did this. So I think they understood very clearly that this was God leading this, and God dominated this the way he did. We need to have that same outlook in our life. That as we go through, I don't care if it's in a work setting, I don't care if it's at the grocery store, I don't care where we're at, in situations we run into on vacation, everything we do should point to God. And if it's not, you know, we need to step back a little bit and spend some more time in prayer and say, God, help me to give you the glory and honor for the things that's being done. I don't want the glory here. I want the glory there. Here it don't last long. But if we give God glory for this and we ask him for his help, he's going to give us the strength. And I'm not saying, you know, you're not going to go in everything and say, whoo, this worked exactly the way I thought it was going to. Probably it's not going to. But if we allow God to use it, it is going to work the way he wanted it to. And sometimes we get frustrated because it's not what we thought would be the result. You know, when you go to witness to someone, are they always going to accept Christ as their personal Savior while you're witnessing to them? No. Do we get offended by that sometimes? I mean, if you're like me, I did it perfect. I answered every question. I was able to lay this out. It was just perfect. What's wrong with you? Why don't you understand this? You know, it's like, I feel rejected. Why did they reject me? Well, and I'm sitting there going, you know, how many times did I just use I in a sentence, talking about what I'm doing for God? You know? And we got to remember, you know, things we do, even though it may not work the way we think it should, if we're willing to let God use us, it's going to work the way he wants to work. And it's going to open the doors that he wants to open. And if we just get ourselves out of the way, and like Asa said, don't let a mere mortal hinder you in what you can do. We need to open our minds a little bit more and get God out of this and get him into this. Of course, saying, God, I don't even understand what you can do. I just pray that you would do all that you can do. And if I can be a part of it, please let me. And things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. We just need to be ready to go on for a ride at that point, because it can get exciting when God gets in charge. Hope y'all have a great day. Good day. Good morning. It's going to be a nice day outside.